Let's start with the three course objectives. After completing this course, all participants will be clear about ESG or sustainability and its impact on strategy and its integration with strategy, the impact on financial, non-financial parameters, and also the impact on environment. This is essential learning because sustainability impacts all function. Finance is as much impacted as operations, as production, as marketing, as sales, and human resources. Normally when we talk about ESG, we talk about environment more. However, there is an S, there is a G. This course will take you through each of these. And like I said earlier, we will be debating on concepts. This is a practitioner course. Your course will have exercises in the respective modules which you will be required to complete. Additionally, there will be enough reference material, case studies to every module that you will find. Happy learning, and let's talk about the concepts to start with. The most difficult thing to do is to simplify. And like many other functions, even our function has many complexities. So let's start understanding some of the basic concepts and debate on how they apply to organizations. Let's start with global warming or the greenhouse gas. What do we understand by the greenhouse gas? Greenhouse effect is something which essentially was an experiment that started in a lab, where you control the atmosphere of the experiment and see a result. It's an enclosed experiment. Here, in the greenhouse effect, you have the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, which increase within the atmosphere. So you have the sun's light which comes in, and because of the increased atmosphere concentration of carbon dioxide and methane and other greenhouse gases, the heat is trapped. Now, we always had an atmosphere. Heat was always being trapped. There is a certain amount of heat that necessarily needs to be trapped so that life can exist on Earth. But when the amount of heat being trapped increases, then the atmospheric conditions start changing. So when carbon emissions increase and there is greater amount of carbon in the atmosphere, heat gets trapped. When heat gets trapped, Earth's surface and the water surface, land and water, warm. Ice melts, increasing the sea level. When the surface, Earth's surface and the water surface get warmer, it emits infrared, which further warms up the atmosphere. So your greenhouse gas effect is limited only to the trapping of heat by carbon. It extends much beyond. But most of us still discuss greenhouse effect only from a point of view of the carbon and the heat being trapped by carbon. Now, even if you take the carbon out, the process of heat trapping at the infrared continues for a very, very long time. In some cases, maybe for years. This is some important aspect to understand when we talk about greenhouse gas. And that connects me to a next concept, net zero. Very hypothetically speaking, the concept is very simple. The amount of carbon that you're putting you take that many carbon out. Now mathematically that's possible. Practically it is very difficult, because business is not about Excel sheet. Moreover, like we saw in the greenhouse effect, even if you take the carbon out, the process of warming goes on for a very long time. So is net zero an ideal option? Is net zero strategy an ideal strategy? Let's debate on this. So one, we saw that even if you take the carbon out, the warming continues for a very long time. The second aspect of this, when carbon is put into the air and companies are planning their strategy to remove carbon out, they create something called the carbon sink. Now what is a carbon sink? Nothing but a concentration of, let's say, trees which absorbs the carbon back, or the carbon dioxide back. So that's called a sink. Now when carbon sinks are created, what does a company do? Typically they go into tree plantation. But think over it. Do you ever plant a tree? You never plant a tree. You plant a sapling. The sapling does not have the same absorption power as a tree. The sapling has to survive 15-20 years to become a tree. But companies tend to take the benefit of it in many cases on their books in terms of the carbon neutrality, carbon negation, absorption of the carbon back, and claim to be net zero. This may be counterproductive. Planting of the trees is good, but something that is for the next generation. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years back, and the next best time is now for the next 20 years. So carbon sinks, to create a carbon sink, to actually create, get into tree plantation activity, may not be the right answer. The second thing that companies tend to do is get into carbon trading. Now this is a very good scheme. When you get into carbon trading, there are exchanges fundamentally in Europe and in China. These exchanges give credits to those companies which have reduced their carbon emission, which they can trade just like your stock exchange, and companies which have not reduced their carbon emission can buy those credits. It is meant to incentivize those companies which are reducing their carbon footprint. But if you really look at it from a practical point of view, the companies who are not reducing carbon are getting away by paying the fee. So in other words, it may not be serving the purpose that it is meant for. So carbon trading, a good concept, but may not be very practical. Broadly, these are the two strategies that companies take. A better concept could be carbon neutral, where you are re-looking at your internal processes, your procurement processes, manufacturing processes, and trying to get to a zero carbon emission. That is a far better strategy. If you look at companies or industries which are, let's say, the mining industry, you can never expect the mining industry to be net carbon zero. Because if it has to be net carbon zero, trust me, they're buying carbon credits or they're planting trees. But getting as close as possible to zero carbon creates a better environment, serves the purpose better. So net carbon zero, carbon neutrality may be a better concept when you're looking at it.